Hello to everyone, welcome to our channel. Today we are doing business partnership, and today being the 2nd of October 2025, we are here at Kyalami Grand Prix Circuit where Reis, APSA and Real Estate are organizing this great event featuring many people across the globe. People well renowned from APSA, from private properties and activists. They are doing the showcase explaining what the business is all about. Us as Rawson Biondel, we are also participating, and let's enjoy the day. Let's go inside and see what is happening. Thank you and see you there.
And I must tell you something that Theo and I go back a long way. He's really very much a tech-savvy executive who really understands technology and where it's going, how it's evolving. And he joined the Better Home Group as the CEO of private property a few years ago. But he brings with himself 2 decades of experience in very similar industries, and he really understands the insights that we're going to be talking about. So it's a great welcome to you. Thank you very much, Theo.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you everyone for joining us for this really great event. We are very, very humbled by your support. We've traveled the country over the course of the years, and spoken to agents from all parts of the country. And yeah, I'm proud to say that a few of you have traveled a long way to really be here today. There's agents from PE, I was surprised to hear that. Agents from Plet, Cape Town, Durban, etc. People have come a long way to join us, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come and share, connect, and grow with us. So, yeah, today we're really excited for this event. It's a great lineup. I want to start off by thanking APSA, Nondumiso, Tsepo, the team. Thank you so much, Jean-Louis, I see you in the corner there. It's been a pleasure working with you guys over the last 5-6 years, and the relationship that we've formed is incredible. This industry is driven by relationships, and it's about human connections, as Aki mentioned. So we're very much excited to be a part of the ecosystem and to be a player that brings you these kinds of events, and in collaboration with APSA, a key partner of the industry. Thank you very much. So today, very special occasion. I'm excited for the lineup. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I will. I'm not going to say too much because I'll speak again a bit later on. Just maybe something that came up to my mind earlier when I saw Adrian sitting over there. I thought, okay, we've got a few champions of industry in the room. We are also at a race course. I checked the back room, there's some helmets there. So I think that maybe during lunch we can do a quick lap and get the winning brand. Adrian, get ready. Barry, get ready. I think Tony should be in here somewhere. Prepare yourself. But all of you need to watch out for Johan, who I saw, Johan's an avid racer. So looking forward to a fantastic day, and please enjoy the space, connect with each other. This is what it's about, human connections, being together. So enjoy Reis. We work very hard behind the scenes. Thank you to my team for putting this together, and it's going to be a fantastic day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I told you guys, I told you guys you're going to be leaving this next presentation full of ideas in your minds. Now, let's get an idea of where we're going economically. And yeah, our main sponsor today is ABSA, but ABSA is really driving incredible change. You've heard their brand is Be the Change, and they're doing some very exciting things. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, has been with the group for a long time. It's Punki Modise, who's the Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer and member of the Group Executive Group at ABSA. She's got more than 15 years of experience holding multiple roles, including Interim Chief Executive of Retail and Business Banking, where she led the group through one of its most challenging times. So she really understands challenges. I want you to give a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to Punki Modise, Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer at ABSA.
Thank you, Aki. I thought you were going to bring me down the stage in a helicopter, but it's okay. We can have a discussion after this. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, partners, and also good morning to the industry leaders. It's really wonderful, to be here this morning. Particularly, developers, estate agencies, conveyancers, SMMEs, and business leaders from across the property ecosystem. Thank you to private property for your partnership and for bringing us together in this way, not just to talk, but to think more boldly about the future that lies ahead of us. I was told I had 30 minutes, to speak, which I think is just enough time to explain interest rates, inequality, climate change, lending models, and still leave 5 minutes for questions. So let's see how well I can do this morning. In all seriousness, when I look at this audience here this morning, I see an industry that's weathered a lot, but I also see creativity. I see resilience, and as we say at ABSA, we also see a shared belief that we are not just financing or developing buildings, we are shaping places where lives unfold. I couldn't have said it better than Craig also this morning, and thanks Craig, I think, for taking us through on that journey. That's why from my side, I am significantly proud to be here, and I'm even more proud to speak on behalf of ABSA, a beautiful organization. The theme of this year's summit is shifting gears, driving sustainable success. It speaks directly to where we are, because we are no longer navigating short-term turbulence. We are living through structural shifts that demand different thinking, different priorities, and also different leadership. So for most of the last 2 years, the South African Reserve Bank held the repo rate at 8.25%, the longest cycle in over a decade. In July this year, we saw the first rate cut to 8%, but the impact of high borrowing costs is still with us, and in particular, it's with our clients, especially for first-time buyers, middle-income households, and Craig, I didn't say emerging middle income, I said middle-income households and small businesses. Beyond interest rates, though, the market has changed in other fundamental ways. Buyers are more cautious, but also more conscious. ESG expectations on the back of that are also rising at an alarming pace. Climate risk is no longer theoretical, it's real. We experience it every day. And the next generation of buyers is asking for something different. Homes that are affordable, homes that are efficient, homes that are sustainable, but most importantly, homes that are future ready. We are no longer building or financing for a market, of 5 years ago. The question is, are we aligned with the market of tomorrow? That is a question that we have to answer as part of the deliberations for the rest of the day. So at ABSA, we are responding, and we are responding not just with clarity, but also with conviction. And we anchor that in particular on two core principles. The first principle is around purpose. It's important to anchor everything that we do for us as an organization of purpose. However, the second principle is around customer obsession. Our purpose at ABSA is to empower Africa's tomorrow together, one story at a time. Hence, we talk a lot about we see your story. And that drives, to a large extent, how we think about housing, because we know that a home is not just a transaction. It's a platform for dignity. It's a platform for opportunity. And also it's a platform for intergenerational progress. So customer obsession for us really means meeting people where they are, not where the data says that they should be. It really means understanding not just the customer's income, but their life. It also means understanding their aspirations, and most importantly also, their barriers, and finally their potential. So to quote Theodore Roosevelt, he said, people don't care much, about what you know until you know how much you care about people. So people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. So that quote has always stayed with me, because in banking, especially housing, it's easy to focus in particular on metrics. But when we obsess over customers, not just markets, we build products that matter. We also build relationships that last, and also trust that outlives any market cycle on the back of that. So customer obsession for us isn't just a slogan, it's a mindset. And for me, it's very personal. It means listening more deeply, designing more intentionally, but also staying close to customers' realities, especially when they're hard to hear, because that's a time when potential and opportunities truly unlock. Ultimately, I think it means recognizing that no model can replace what it means to walk in someone's shoes. And so we have to build, but clearly build with care, because success in this industry doesn't start with a product, it starts with people. A few years ago, I happened to attend an executive program at the London School of Economics. One insight from that experience has stayed with me up to this very day. In developed economies, intergenerational wealth is built, quite literally on access to credit, especially mortgage lending. Over time, home ownership becomes more than just a shelter. It becomes a financial asset, a safety net, and a foundation for upward mobility. You see this reflected in the structure of the balance sheets in developed markets. Long-term mortgage lending makes much of the larger share of credit portfolios than in developed ones. That's not just a difference in lending. It's a difference in who gets to build wealth and who doesn't. A transfer process that doesn't lock people out. Agencies, are you selling homes or are you shaping communities? And funders like ourselves, are we financing the future or replicating the past? We don't need more debate. We need more smarter products, braver partnerships, and business models that match the moment of today. So our commitment as ABSA is very clear. We are expanding access to affordable, inclusive housing finance. We are embedding customer obsession into how we design and deliver our services. We are also supporting climate-aligned real estate development on the back of that. Partnering across the ecosystem to drive systemic change. We don't have all the answers. We acknowledge that, but we are showing up with clarity, with intent, and also with purpose. So it's no longer enough to shift gears. It's time for us to change lanes. So let's not build for a world we inherited. Let's build for the future that we all believe in. Let's build the property sector that doesn't just move forward. Let's build a property sector that moves South Africa in an inclusive way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pinky. Inspirational as always. Thank you very, very much. And I love the fact, I think that you are the custodians of the financial services industry, part of all the banks. And I think it's important for you to share that optimism for the country. Despite all the doom and gloom that's happening in the country, ABSA is one of those banks that remains optimistic and plows back into the community. And I think that's very important. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's the right place to start with smart people in the room like yourselves who have seen a lot, have been around the block and have seen things. Oh, by the way, just last night I signed the purchase, or rather the selling of my property. So again, thanks to folks like you in the room, I sold my property in Benmore, and thanks to you all for making that happen as well. Okay? But let's start over here. So in terms of today's conference, and just in general, this guy is an author. His name's Alvin Toffler. Alvin Toffler has written a number of books. One of the books he's written is a book called Future Shock. Future Shock, he says, is the feeling that you have when you think about the future. You might be scared, you might be excited, you might be nervous. But he says something more profound in his book. He says the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And a fundamental statement, an incredible statement that says we need to think about where the world is going, where we're driving towards, because, as they say in Back to the Future where we're going maybe doesn't have roads. It maybe doesn't have houses. How do we think about this future differently, right? And so it's the ability to unlearn some of the things that we think to be true today, which will set us up for the future tomorrow. Now, it's still very early. I know some of you are running from that side of the room to this side over here. Some of you haven't had your 2 cups of coffee. Some of you are in your first one. So I thought, let me start by sharing a video around this concept of learning, unlearning, and relearning to help you understand how difficult this is by changing one small thing on a bicycle.
He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this. I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences, and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick, or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this.
Can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up?
But I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I've proved is that I can only redesignate that bias.
But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned.
So I learned 3 things from this experiment. I learned that welders are often smarter than engineers. I learned that knowledge does not equal understanding. And I learned that truth is truth, no matter what I think about it. So be very careful how you interpret things, because you're looking at the world with a bias, whether you think you are or not.
Okay, so this frames us for the rest of today. It frames us for the rest of perhaps the next couple of years. Because he speaks about a number of key things, but there's 2 important things I want you to think about. The first is that knowledge does not equal understanding. So we know the world is changing. Like you spoke about, that we know that AI is here, but how many of us know how to use it? How many of us understand the implications of what it really is beyond going onto ChatGPT and asking about ourselves and our real estate portfolio, right? So how do we think about this differently? So that's the first piece. But the other piece that's so important as well is the whole question of biases. Now, biases are a normal physiological response, right? It's a neurological thing, but it's also a physical thing. Because as we grow up, as we get older, the neurons in our brain connect more synapses. We have higher connections or synapses, they become more dense and those become thicker over time. And it's the ability to connect these neurons in our brain which allows us to learn new stuff. Okay? The problem is we learn over time, our learning diminishes. And so we default to heuristics, we default to patterns, and our rate of learning slows down. That forms the basis of biases. Now that itself is not a problem. The problem is when you have the inability to overcome those biases. To show you, I'll give an example of why that's so powerful. If you do a brain scan or biopsy of a 2-year-old child, even though they've got a brain that's half the size of an adult, they've got more than double the neural connections. Because the neuroplasticity is such that they keep on learning, keep on learning, keep on learning. But for a lot of us as adults, we stop learning over time. We stop defaulting and we start saying, I know the answer to that thing before, right? But this is more profound than just the biases thing, because there's a great book that you should probably read in your world, because Annie Duke is actually a professional poker player. She's a neuroscientist, but she speaks around the neuroscience of people behavior and how they make decisions, which is probably very applicable to your world. But she says something very interesting. She says, the smarter you are, the better you are at constructing a narrative that supports your beliefs, rationalizing and framing the data to fit your argument or point of view. Basically, the smarter you are, the more likely you are to say, yes, I know that already, and I have an answer to that thing. I've been in real estate for 10 years. I know how to sell this. 20 years, I've seen that kind of customer before we do this. And whilst you might be right, it's not a guarantee thereof. Right? So this is a huge problem for smart people. But there's a second piece that came through, and this is a research paper that came through in 2012. And in this paper, the researchers found something called a blind spot bias. The blind spot bias is when you can see the bias in someone else, but you have the inability to see it in yourself. That Theo guy, he's like this. Aki, he's even worse, but you can't see it in yourself. Right? So what do these two pieces of research show us? These two pieces of research show us that the smarter you are, the more likely you are to have biases, and the more likely you are to have a problem to succeed in the future when it changes very quickly. And so this is a huge issue for us in this business, right? Specifically with the rise of prop tech, with the rise of AI, and with how things are changing over time. But fundamentally, I've been doing this speaking thing now, I've been doing this futures thing now for close to 2 decades. And I've shifted my views from the what of the future towards the how of the future. Because a lot of times when there's people like myself on stage and they say things that say the future is this, the future is that, they don't necessarily understand how to think about the future. The what of the future is pretty easy because you speculate and say it's AI, it's Bitcoin, it's NFTs, it's digitization, it's the Internet of Things and so on and so forth, right? But for me, I really got frustrated. So how do we think about the future differently? And so I did my PhD, and my PhD research was actually to answer the question, what do companies do to succeed in the future? That formed the basis of my company with the foresight, where I'm able to actually look at a number of different factors that allows me to determine if you're going to succeed as a business or not. But I can also go a step further and say stuff like, how do I actually measure the values of your organization? And now I can do a correlation analysis between the values of your organization and your perceived profitability. Okay, so that's part of what my research was. But more than that, I was really struck with this question, why do people fail to see the future? How can we see the future differently? And so I lent upon two fundamental frameworks. The first is something called Johari's window, which was done by two psychologists, Ingram and Luft, in the 1960s. And they said, well, how do we understand the way that people see themselves and how other people see them in a lovely framework for communication, leadership, and so on and so forth. You should have a look at it. It's called Johari's window. The second one was from Donald Rumsfeld, which is really important in the context of the world we are right now, because he said this in the context of the second war in Iraq. He said, there's things we know, those are the known knowns. There's things we don't know that we don't know, those are the unknown unknowns. And there's things we think we don't know, those are the known unknowns. If any of you got that, you're way smarter than I am. Okay? Because he said this at a conference and the journalists laughed and they giggled like some of you. But as it turns out, Rumsfeld has created a framework to say, how do we organize the knowledge and expertise? And as it turns out, in the crazy world we are today, with Pete Hegseth saying some crazy stuff, maybe it's going to rear its head again. So I took those two frameworks, and in 2023 I was traveling around Japan. Anyone been to Japan? Japan? Yes, some of you? It's an incredible place. Wonderful place. If you have got a chance, please do go, because they're about to limit the number of visas, the number of people they can visit, because they actually have too much tourists. Imagine having that kind of problem, right? But irrespective, in 2023, I was traveling around Japan, and because of how Japan is developed, for about 200 years they were closed off to the Western world because they didn't want the impact of Christianity. So from the mid-1500s to the mid-1700s they were closed off, they started to open up, and then there were the 2 world wars. But as a result of this effect, they kind of developed by themselves, and so they have all these lovely words, things like mono no we, wabi sabi, words and things like beauty and imperfection, things like the transient nature of things. My favorite though is a word called kuchi sabichi. Kuchi sabichi means I'm not hungry, my mouth is just lonely. So that's a constant desire to feed yourself at a conference like this, which I know many of you were doing this morning already. Okay? But the one that resonated most with this framework is the concept of Shikisan Zuizu. And maybe this in itself is perhaps a tip for you when you're selling houses. Because as it turns out, the aristocratic in Japan take their garden and segment it into 4 quarters. And they plant flowers specific for each season. Right? So for summer they have the chrysanthemum, for spring they've got the cherry blossoms, for winter they've got evergreens and so on and so forth. And this allows them some beautiful things. This allows them to walk through their gardens as the seasons change to see the transient beauty of stuff. You can enjoy the garden through the year, but it also helps you to understand what is the real season, not what's the pretend season, or what is it supposed to be.
In South Africa, we always make a plan. Mr. Zanzibar has been preparing us for years. Angie, update me. The craters?
That's very great.
Good job. Oh, look at this. Radford, just like home. Stop. Space. Hey guys, Load stage 6. You see, no power doesn't mean we're powerless.
Okay, so
Thank you very much. It's great to see you all. Today I'm going to talk about AI and how it's changing the global real estate industry. Now the first question you're probably going to ask is, what is an Australian doing on stage talking about this? Okay? Well, actually an Australian who lives in Europe. So for the last 25 years, I've been deeply involved in the global prop tech industry. I'm the former CEO of a company called the REA Group in Australia. When I joined, it was a $8 million market cap. I left, it was $1 billion market cap. And today it's a 30+ billion market cap, one of the largest prop tech players in the world. I've also founded multiple prop tech businesses over the last 25 years. Some have been successful, some have failed. I've learned a lot in that process. Okay? But I'm also an advisor to many different companies. I actually helped Theo out when he was working in Turkey at Hepsi Emlak. I'm an advisor to companies from large ones to small ones. I've been the chairman of multiple listed companies. I've been involved in 5 listings myself, which we can talk about that another time. And I've also been an investor in many different companies. I've set up recently a prop tech farm, Fund 3, which is focusing on the Southeast Asian markets. I've invested in, as you heard, many different companies over the years, and I've also invested in 10 what's called tech-enabled brokerages. These are real estate businesses, like many of you have, that are using technology to fundamentally change the way they do business. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. And a lot is going to build on what Craig was talking about earlier. And I'm going to try to apply a lot of practical examples that you can walk out the door today and play with to implement in your businesses. I'm going to talk for about 50 minutes, maybe less, 45, and then I want to throw it open to questions. If you have no questions, I'll talk for another 15. We've got lots to talk about. Okay? So why are we looking at AI? I've heard about it left, right and centre. If you haven't heard about AI, I don't know where you've been. Okay? But when you think about the real estate process, going from left to right, the person selling the house, the agency, the developer, doesn't matter who it is, it can be rentals as well. If I talk about agents, I mean developers. If I talk about rentals or for sale, it's all the same, right? It's a process. You have someone who has something that they want either sold or rented, and you have someone who wants to move into it. Okay? And what is AI about? It's about efficiency. So if I'm selling a house, I want to sell it faster for more. If I'm an agent, I want to be relevant in the future, because you don't want to disappear, okay? And you want to have greater profitability as a business. Come on, who doesn't want to make more money, okay? And if you're a person buying or renting, you want your best match at the lowest cost. That's all what efficiency is at the end of the day, is how do you bring all these together? So the traditional real estate industry is sort of still pretty much the same as it was, dare I say it, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, okay? With some technology enhancements along the way. But there's been an emergence over the last decade or so of these what's called tech-enabled brokerages. And what are they? These are companies that start with technology at its core. They think of real estate sales as a process. And they use the technology to automate low-value activities, where people are usually doing work that can be automated, and sometimes the quality of the work being done is not as good as it could be. Okay? Then it's about integrating all parts of the process. So integrating not only the sales transaction, but how do I integrate mortgages, insurance, removal services, and so on. Linking externally to the various providers. It's about exploiting unique data. They're building data that is unique to them. And as we heard from Craig before, if you have data, you're not in the winter, you're in the summer. Because the data is what is going to allow AI to not hallucinate, but to actually find you. Process. And then what's core to these businesses is about continual process optimization. It's about thinking about all the little steps and how do I get a little bit better every single day. They operate at high scale, they've got much happier customers because customers get consistent process or consistent experience, and they have greater profitability. One of the companies that I've been helping recently is a little company in China called Baike, 450,000 salespeople. Anyone got an agency that big here? Just out of curiosity's sake. Okay. They have 30% of the transactions in China. Okay. 65 of the transactions in some cities go through them. They've got multiple sub-brands they operate under, of course. They're not silly about having just one brand. 78% brand recognition. And they're in multiple segments: sales, rentals, renovation. One technology platform that everyone uses. One platform. 13 billion revenue, 3.2 billion profit, 22 billion market cap. You can invest in them on the New York Stock Exchange. Now clearly you're not going to be this size. In fact, there's only one of them. But there are many, many other companies out there that are going down this path, and I'm involved in many of them. There's a company in Brazil called Alcubo I'm involved in. There's a company in Thailand called Lazudi I'm involved in. GIIQI based out of Malaysia, and so on. Okay? Now what is enabling them to occur? The answer is technology adoption. Now we saw earlier a technology adoption curve. This is real estate AI adoption curve. We're currently around about 40 or 50% of agencies are using, not just agencies, but the industry are using AI to some extent in their operations. They're experimenting, they're trying to make it work. Now, how did Baike, or it's called KE Holdings, if you want to find it on the stock exchange, grow to be so large? It's because they had to build it all from scratch. Now, you've got the model sitting there. the AI-driven models, which allows for adoption and innovation to occur in your businesses. You don't have to be a $22 billion business to make this happen. So I thought, what is the best way to talk about AI in this environment? Okay, and the answer is, I want to give you practical examples that you can walk away with today and play with. And how do I do that? Well, let's talk around the real estate sales and marketing process, because it's a process, okay? It's about how do I market the agency to create awareness that I exist so that I can win the listing. Because if I've got a listing, I've got something to sell. I've got to prepare the listing for sales. I've got to market it on sites like private property, okay? I've then got to manage the leads that come in, and then I've got to close the deal. That's the process, right? At the end of the day, it's not the world's most complex process. It's the same process that existed probably 100 years ago. But how can technology and AI impact every one of those parts of the process? With the fundamental objective of doing two things. One is, where possible, dare I say it, removing people from the process. Why? When you have people involved in a process, you tend to get missed opportunity. You tend to get inconsistency in service. And second is, if you can do all of that, you can then focus your time on those parts of the transaction where people still really matter, which is in winning the listing and closing the deal. And basically everything in between can really be automated. And that's where we're going, the future. Okay? So let's start by going through the following. Okay? I'm going to step through each part of this process. Okay? Got to keep an eye on the time here. Okay? Marketing the agency. Why? We've got to create strong awareness of your brand amongst the target customers to ensure that you're included in the owner's sales process. If the owner doesn't give you a call, and you only find out that the house is for sale when it's on the market, then for free, I don't care. Right? Okay, it just came out of my head. Actually, here's an important learning point in this process.
Social and spatial, yeah, social and... I hope those are not guilty laughs. But I think that when we think around how we plan cities and how the property market can begin to be very intentional about the sorts of investments that are possible. These are perhaps some of the levers we can think about, and how public planning and policy planning can catch up with that. We have for many years, the NDP talks about safer cities, all of the things, mixed spatial use, and all of this. There's also, the human settlements has a gendered component to it, the Human Settlements Department, about how where women are situated in cities, safe lighting, for example, the distance, safe cities where you don't have to go through these dingy corridors from the transport services to your home and so on. And it also links us to a conversation around public transport, safe public transport, buses, railway services. I personally would love to park and ride and be able to just jump on a train or jump on a bus in order to get to where I'm getting to. Let us, dear God, let's get the cars off the roads. But this all needs a different orientation, which isn't just let's plop a beige apartment block over there and leave it at that.
As you sparked a thought about the NDP, and again, sorry if your child goes to one of those schools or doesn't know your name, but do we have, I know we've got a lot of agents, do we have any developers or town planners in the room? Now is the time to be brave and raise your hand after the shade you've just received. That's wonderful, thank you. I think this is important because bringing us into the National Development Plan and all of the policy work and conversation that's been taking place, how is the industry, how can the industry get involved and understand where the NDP is, what role they can play in terms of deciding the kind of cities we want to build, and not just here's a plot and build something, but really think about what the needs are in that space and in that area. Dr. Alton, I know you've done quite a lot of work within the NDP space, so I just wanted to think about some of the critical areas or the non-negotiable areas that the industry and the players in the industry need to be thinking of that are available within that policy spectrum.
Yeah. Some of it's aspirational, eh?
All of it's aspirational. All of the policies in this country are aspirational, but we continue to hope.
So I want to bring together two things that I've been deeply involved in, which is for many years I was involved in working on how we solve for unemployment, and also in the past, I don't know, maybe a decade or more, I've been deeply involved in various ways in infrastructure, be it head of strategy at Telecom, turning it around, to leading water security work in Gauteng and Etukwini most recently.
Okay.
Through partnerships, by the way. So the one thing is, I've dealt with situations where you're in decline, like Telecom was, stabilizing, or growth. What you do in each of those phases is different. Our country, unfortunately, is in the cusp of that, either stagnating and a little bit in decline, actually. Let's just be real. And what you do in that situation actually isn't neuroscience. It's not. It's complicated when you're growing fast. If you're Singapore, it's very hard to know what you're going to do next. When you are actually in our situation, it's very easy to know. So as an example, we make it too complicated. So as an example, one of the core contributors to employment would be effective urban spaces. People don't see that connection. They think, oh, we've got to create jobs. Actually, if you have densified housing, which has been the policy of the country for years, including in the NDP, but not only, densified housing, effective urban spaces that are integrated, social, 24/7 clinics, police station, places where kids can play, safe, quality homes, communities that are effectively working together near places of work, or if you're not near places of work, you have effective and affordable public transport, you have a functional situation where firstly people are getting information, because jobs and growth are all about one thing leading to the other, right? It's about seeing the opportunity, oh, a building's going up, maybe I can sell sandwiches, maybe I can get business out of that, knowing the person, knowing how to get in, being able to get there affordably and accessing the opportunity. Unfortunately, now we're kind of still stuck in this apartheid space economy, which is the best possible plan if you want to have low growth and high unemployment. It's beautifully designed for very high unemployment and stagnation, frankly, which is that people live in the wrong place, jobs are over here, people live over there, services are poor. It means that people are always in stress. Most people, even middle-class people in this country, are on the cusp of falling off. One crisis throws you off, right? That's the live reality for most people.
And all the letting agents said amen. And that's one month missed payment away from that property going down the drain.
And that is about, because we're an urbanized society mostly, most people actually live in the metros. So effectively, even though we don't often connect those dots, that's what it's about, is having that. Now, unfortunately, your point, you should have a single ticket to get on a bus, into a taxi, onto a train. Unfortunately, we have the trains completely collapsing. If you live in Katlicha or wherever, all bets are off, right?
The largest bonds, and we're not thinking about, to the point about density, we're not thinking about the smaller kinds of products, the less expensive products, which actually accommodate the majority of people. We're also not thinking around the kinds of products which are able to spread and disperse us geographically, because our spatial geography is,
too concentrated.
It's highly concentrated. It is a historical legacy, an apartheid legacy that we're still living in the afterlife, and not so much an afterlife. It's the current life for many, many people. And so in this, we haven't been able to rethink and reframe a successful city. So a successful city is ideally, when we think about KPI performance indicators, it is one that is able to be functional. which is efficient, which is able to give us the things that we need within either a walking distance, a driving distance, a busing distance, a quick commuting distance away. And the other thing around that is that because we have only thought about the townships over there and suburbia over there, and that's really, again, a really regrettable endowment over the last 30 years that not nearly enough has been done to dismantle and to reintegrate the city in ways that are really meaningful, and let alone then also the urban and the rural divide. But even within, I get a bit disturbed when we talk about townships there, suburbs here, because then it just assumes that we're going to continue to live in this imagination of where certain people, that African people should continue to live in underdeveloped townships, and as though, informal settlements should remain that way. And what happens is that, in fact, instead, because people are inherently very enterprising, very creative, have very high survival mechanisms as well, and often with very little state support, those nodes often begin to create a life of themselves. So you do have people beginning to be industrious, the spaza economy, I don't like to call it that, but the smaller scale township-based entrepreneurs, for example, and township-based businesses, which don't get nearly enough support. Another piece of that is also that we have to then think around the corridors, where not only are there corridors between and within townships and so-called suburbs. I mean, I'm often so apt, it's uncomfortable languaging, but to rethink what we would like a city that's fully integrated to look like. What would it look like? Where would the freeways be? What would the roads look like? Where would these derelict train stations, where would we begin to resuscitate them? Where would we then begin to also think about public safety, visible community policing, not only investors, but also make it viable and enjoyable for us to be able to live in these cities. So our KPIs cannot only be linked to the return on investment, we also have to think of the return on human investment. Those quality of life indicators, the air quality. It's still a shocking thing that a lot of the air quality in historically African townships is so much lower. The de-treeification of townships was a political thing, and we have to rethink when are we building the trees? When is it, and why do we then wonder why people are a bit more frazzled? We can't breathe. There is no carbon dioxide, there's no oxygen. We can't breathe. And it also links to then the KPIs and the climate indexes as very much integrated, not as an add-on, but also not as something that looks different for different areas. If we're thinking about integrated cities and integrated spaces, all of that thinking, the apartheid spatial planning has to be completely rethought, and that's a lot of work.
That is a lot of work, but it says to us that if we're going to think about sustainable success as a sector, we cannot be on the periphery of conversations around all of the things that impact the people who have to live in the houses that we're building and transferring for.
Why have you not been reporting stuff? Why have you not been let us make in our organizations? People must live the values. Make sure that their performance system, your promotion system, your hiring, everything is connected back to the values. That is very important, so that people drive the culture, so that this thing does not depend on individuals. We'll go leave this board, we want to go do the things that we have been doing, but we want to make sure that we are living behind a culture, a high performance culture, an ethical culture, which means we have to embed it in each and every system, this thing. So that's what we have been doing, led competently by Dan Marokand. So one of the items there was to...
Yes, people, the day is over. It has been an incredible day organized by Reis and APSA and private properties. The day has been fantastic. Property, real estate is the business to go. Please invest and be a real estate agent. Stay connected, and bye-bye. See you soon.